Good thirsty Thursday morning to you. Welcome on into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and of course, you are wonderful listeners as well. 205-834-9450 on Thursdays. We ask you who is on upset alert this weekend. I know last weekend, if you would have told me Vanderbilt, hey, Alabama needs to watch out for Vanderbilt, I would have laughed at you. And then Saturday happened, and it's like, okay, well, if you are playing college football, it feels like every team in the nation is on upset alert if you are a favorite. But we want to know from you this weekend. Of course, we got some wonderful matchups, especially in the SEC. And as we get closer to Saturday, the one game that's really starting to I'm seeing it on both sides of the coin is this Ole Miss and LSU matchup happening in Baton Rouge Saturday night. And you know, for LSU going into the bye week, it seemed like they were starting to click a little bit. They're starting to figure some things out. Ole Miss with that loss against Kentucky, but going to South Carolina, handling their business, it feels like they're starting to work out all the kinks. And Conrad, I want to ask you this too: is it too early to have a high praise for this Ole Miss defense because of who they've played offensively, or is this defense legit? Because I look at that Kentucky matchup. It wasn't like Kentucky was just blowing them off the ball offensively. They were making plays on third downs in certain situations. And, I mean, you look at what Brock Vandagriff was able to do. But every other game you see, like, okay, well, Ole Miss's defense is flying around. Like, they got some big dudes. They know what they have offensively with the high motor of how everything Lane wants to operate on the offensive side of the ball. But I know it's probably going to be difficult to admit. But, I mean, Pete Golden's he's doing pretty good over there in Oxford, Mississippi with that defense.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I never thought Pete Golding was bad at his job necessarily when he was at Alabama. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people that maybe right now would go, oh man, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if Pete Golding was in Tuscaloosa. Because again, I mean, if we go back to, some of those years where people were unhappy with how the defense performed in Tuscaloosa, I mean, they were still a top 15, top 20 defense in the country, and you're not right now. But anyway, besides that, I think Pete Golding's done a really good job there at Ole Miss so far, especially just, I mean, again, it's Ole Miss, right? It's not a school that, at least in recent history, you really associate with the defensive side of the ball. And so the fact that, he just needed to go in there and get them to be an average defense, and he's got them playing certainly as an above average defense right now. But as you mentioned, you just haven't really played any high powered offenses up to this point. I mean, is South Carolina the best offense that you've maybe played so far? I mean, Kentucky has scored the most points against you.
Right.
I feel like maybe South Carolina has the most maybe big play capabilities of the teams that you've placed, which, I mean, that's not really saying a ton exactly, but, that's why this LSU game is really, really interesting to me, is just because, this is by far the biggest test that they will have faced up to this point. And, we'll see what Garrett Nussmeier and them are able to do against Ole Miss, because, maybe they are legit. Maybe it is a situation where, we're talking about, oh, okay, Ole Miss is for real, and they had their one bad week against Kentucky, but we know what they can do offensively. And then, if they can be, you don't have to hold teams to 10 points like you've been doing this first month of the season. But I mean, if you're holding people under 20, I mean, you got to feel really good about, you're going to win a lot of football games that way with how good you are offensively. So this is going to be this is a big test, but this game is just, I don't know. This game's kind of hard for me to put a finger on it. I mean, the fact that Ole Miss is a 3.5 point favorite on the road in Baton Rouge is a little surprising to me. I'll be honest. I wasn't really expecting that, because look, they had a good bounce back win last week. I mean, they beat South Carolina 27-3. I guess I just wasn't. It was a good win. Don't get me wrong, but I guess with Ole Miss, you're just used to them, putting up 40 plus points, and that isn't exactly how it went on Saturday. So this one's so tricky, man, just because, are you going to get the Ole Miss team we saw against Kentucky? Are we going to get the LSU that we saw against South Carolina and USC at times earlier in the year? I mean, I don't know. But I think the Ole Miss defense is definitely the most important part of this game, because, I mean, they're going to be able to put up points. I mean, Nichols was able to score against LSU. So I think Ole Miss will be just fine in that department. It's just, are we going to get another, a 52-50 type game like that we got last year? Or are we going to get something that's more like maybe a 31-28, a 35-30, something like that, where there's
Yeah.
still a lot of points scored, but you can clearly tell that the defense, if they had a couple stops in there, which that didn't happen really at all last year.
Yeah, I remember, of course, the game last year with Jaden Daniels getting absolutely blown up on a couple plays. And then just some of the offensive snaps that you saw from Ole Miss when, they were fighting to come back. And it was it wasn't the best defensive matchup, but offensively you were
I was supposed to say, if you like points, that was probably your favorite game last year.
Absolutely. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that could happen again this year. Do I think it's going to happen? Maybe not, because I do think Ole Miss's defense is better. But I do think it's probably one of the trickier games to look at. And when you just look across the SEC, of course, South Carolina taking on Alabama there in Tuscaloosa, kicking off at 11 o'clock. Missouri travels to UMass. Let that simmer down, and you take that for what it is. They're an SEC school is traveling to UMass. So,
well, they needed it after last week.
Yeah. Just kind of, rinse that out of your system. And then Texas and Oklahoma in Red River. A rivalry game now we have SEC ties into. And we've seen what Oklahoma has looked like these past couple weeks. The offensive, it's crazy that we've gotten to a point where we're asking about Oklahoma on the offensive side of the ball when for decades upon decades, that side of the ball we had no worries about. And now they've kind of taken a new identity where Brent Venables is the head coach. He's got their defense. They've had they've gone against some tougher offenses with Tennessee. Auburn up until one play kind of had their will against them. And I just think that this game, of course, Red River, we've seen Texas teams that have gone in there, highly ranked and gotten upset from Oklahoma, or we've seen highly ranked Oklahoma teams go in there and get beaten by Texas. So I do think that this game can kind of go either way. I do lean Texas because they are the better team. But we've seen how this rivalry can go. All it takes is one crazy play or one crazy snap, and all of a sudden, mayhem completely breaks loose there in Dallas.
Yeah, it was, granted, 2 years ago, Oklahoma didn't have a great season, but neither did Texas. But at the time when these teams played, it was kind of before the collapse for Oklahoma that year, where they ended up going 6-6. But you went into that game, and Oklahoma was a big favorite in that game, going up against a Texas team that I think they went 5-7 that year under Sark, and Texas went in there and won 49-0.
Yep.
And it was just one of those, I did not ever in a million years see that coming type of situations. And I understand the teams are in different spots now, but I think a lot of people, weren't expecting Oklahoma to win this game last year. And they did. And I know there's no Dylan Gabriel on the Oklahoma side of things, and that certainly would help. But, again, this is similar to, I'm not talking about in terms of the magnitude of the rivalry or whatever. I'm not saying this is better than the Iron Bowl, but I'm saying it in the sense of the Iron Bowl where you feel like it doesn't really matter what the team's records are going into it. This game could go any way. It doesn't matter if Auburn's 0-12 and Alabama's 12-0 or vice versa. It's probably going to be a dogfight. And that's kind of how I feel about this one is, Oklahoma has their back against the wall a little bit. I think defensively they can certainly cause some problems for Texas, especially with Quinn expected to come back. And, he might be a little rusty, and that might be something that kind of plays into Oklahoma's advantage a little bit. But, the real question is, what did you just figure out in the last 2 weeks about your offense? Because the offense that we saw against Auburn, I know they won the football game, but that's not going to cut it against Texas. You're going to have to find a way to score points, and I have some serious concerns about what Oklahoma can do on that side of the ball, and if they're not able to keep this on the lower scoring side of things, I think it certainly favors Texas. But when you look and you see Texas 14.5-point favorite, it's possible. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. This is just one of those games where anything can happen.
Absolutely. And again, now the Red River has an SEC appeal to it. They're in the Cotton Bowl in Dallas. And we got a battle of the Bulldogs. Mississippi State travels to Athens to take on Georgia. I don't really think there's much to say about that. We know what Mississippi State is. And I know Jeff Lebby ain't gonna go in there scared. He ain't gonna go in there and, just hand it to Kirby, but when you don't have the Jimmys and Joes and Georgia's on the other side, it does not give you the best recipe for success. And
No, but Georgia's also struggled out the
True.
gate in a lot of their games. So not saying that I think Mississippi State's going to win or anything, but it might be interesting for a quarter.
Yeah.
And then Georgia's going to Georgia, and that'll be that.
It happens. It happens. And then the game that's kind of flying under the radar because of what we saw to this team last week, Tennessee, they welcome in the Florida Gators. And Florida with a win over UCF. Feels like Billy Napier's coaching for his life.
Yeah,
if you
feels like that every week.
Yeah, and you mess around and make it a little sloppy for Tennessee. If you can make it a little interesting, because right now Tennessee is a 15.5-point favorite. If you can go into Neyland and punch Tennessee in the face a couple times, this game could be interesting. I'm not saying that Florida's going to pull off the upset. I don't think they can. But crazier things have happened. If there's anything I've learned in the past 2 weeks here in the SEC, by God, if you're not playing your A+ game, you can walk out of there with an L with ease.
Yeah. My question for this game is, and it's really for the Florida fans, is do you really want to win this game? And I don't mean that. I know that sounds like, well, duh, obviously we want, I get it. You want to win the game. Do you really want to win the game, though, with what the implications of that could be for your coaching staff? Because, again, it doesn't, I'm not saying that if Florida beats Tennessee on Saturday that Billy Napier's job is 100% secure, but it's probably a lot more secure then than it is right now.
Yep.
And, I really wonder if PG and Lee and some of the other Florida fans that listen, if you really want, because, they've been on the lose for lane train since the start of the season. And so now I just kind of wonder with a game like Tennessee, it would be a great win. It would be,
Huge.
You would love it in the moment, but, if it means that ultimately you're going to be stuck with Billy Napier for at least another year, is it worth it, to the fan base? I think that's maybe one of the more interesting parts of it. But, I mean, as you said, look, we saw Nico look like a freshman. And, whether that means that teams are now going to be able to go and try to replicate what Arkansas did and give him the same issues, that's where it comes down to, him and Heupel and that coaching staff and how much can he grow week to week in the SEC? Because, you're going to have games where teams are able to make you look like a freshman, but having the experience now, are you able to go back and not make those same mistakes again and find ways to work around that and combat that? So it'll be, I do think that one's a sneaky, interesting game, though, just because it feels like, I mean, heck, we make fun of Mississippi State and even talking about that Georgia game, but they gave Texas a little bit of a fight a couple weeks ago. So it's like, it feels like pretty much every single game, every single week now in the SEC, you're kind of sitting there like, there's a chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance. And I agree with you 100%. If you're Florida, say Billy Napier does get this one. I mean, I know that month of November is going to be absolutely brutal, but he's going to be able to hang his hat on some big time wins. Like you find a way to beat Tennessee this week, that's a top 10 victory. No matter how you slice it up, it's a top 10 victory for a guy that's literally fighting for his life at this point. And there's no telling what the future may hold. That game kicking off at 6 p.m. on ESPN. And, of course, Ole Miss, LSU kicking off at 6:30 on ABC. And how about Vanderbilt and Kentucky? The bordering, I guess you'd say the bordering state war. It's Kentucky right now, a 13.5-point favorite at home. We saw what Vanderbilt was able to do last week. Mark Stoops is one of those coaches that, when he's riding high, he can find a way to beat a top 5 team in Ole Miss. And when they're bad, they can find a way to lose to Vanderbilt. I've seen it happen before, but there's no telling where this game could possibly be. So it's just kind of look at the landscape of the SEC. Even if it's not an SEC team who should be on upset alert, who should be on upset alert this weekend? You see Ohio State travels to Oregon. Oregon, a home dog for the first time all season long. And, could Ohio State start to show some cracks in the armor a little bit? So we'll continue the conversation on the other side. Take your text messages, your calls, 205-834-9450. What team should be on upset alert for the weekend? Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 619 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and of course you as well, 205-834-9450, your text, your calls as we look on to this weekend of who should be on upset alert. Also, prayers out to everybody affected by Hurricane Milton down there in Florida. It definitely made landfall, and you could tell from the downpour, the flooding in some areas. Just prayers up for everybody that's affected down there because it definitely came in crashing pretty hard.
Yeah, if you I mean, if anybody saw the video of Tropicana Field, and the roof that was essentially removed by the hurricane last night, that's a scary sight to see. And I saw a video of something that I've never seen before, where I mean, the hurricane had essentially sucked up so much of the water that there was a video of a news reporter like at the shoreline, and you can see like the bed of the ocean because the water had been taken off of the shore and like
Wow.
sucked into the storm surge, and you could literally see the bottom of the ocean where the water was gone. It was some scary stuff going on, and it's going to be a long few days for people down there in Florida. So yeah, like Damian said, thoughts and prayers with everyone affected, and hope that if you're in that area that you're able to get out and get somewhere safely, and that you're able to go home and have everything be like it was before a couple days ago. So thoughts and prayers with the first responders too, because that was the scary part about Tropicana Field. Is from what I saw, nobody got hurt, but that's where they were staging a lot of the first responders and like linemen and guys that are down there to help with the aftermath of the storm, and just hope that they're still all doing okay there and finding a way to stay safe and find some shelter, man. It's scary stuff, man. You don't mess with Mother Nature.
Absolutely. We had some action in college football last night as well, as Jacksonville State knocks off New Mexico State 54-13.
Get cocky with it, baby.
Yes, sir. Tyler Huff, 11-18, 196, 2 touchdowns. Trey Stewart, the running back, 21 carries, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well. Just a complete effort. And New Mexico State's definitely missing Jerry Kill and Diego Pavia and those boys. It's a
little different now.
It really is. It's definitely different. How about your New York Yankees, Conrad? It's a little baseball action. And
yeah, pulled off a close one last night, 3-2. Can close it out tonight. We'll see.
How you feeling? You feeling pretty confident?
I don't know, man. Royals are tricky. Their pitching's been really, really good, and I'm glad the Yankees are in a good spot right now, but if Aaron Judge doesn't learn how to hit a baseball, it's not going to be pretty. I think he's now 1 for 12 this series with a walk and a single, and that's it. It's been bad. So hopefully they can close it out tonight. And Dodgers, they win last night, get a shutout of the Padres, so they take that to a deciding Game 5. I guess Cole's now a Padres fan, so that's the Kublik versus McElroy playoff series, just based on the hat that he's been wearing here lately. So that was good for Dodgers fans. And then, in the series that Braves fans probably didn't want to watch, the Mets closed it out last night as well. And
yeah,
they just kind of took care of I'm telling you, there is a curse now on the National League East. Whoever wins that division, like next year, you're going to have 3 or 4 teams that are actively trying to not win that division, because for whatever reason, teams cannot win the division and have success in the postseason. You got to be the wild card team or one of the wild card teams from the NL East. And as we've seen the Phillies do a number of times recently, and now the Mets. So
yeah, and
it's rough.
I thought the Philadelphia Phillies, once you get that first round bye, I thought you were cooking. I thought you were fine. Yeah,
I mean, they were the best team in baseball for the majority of the season, and that's why we play the games, Damian.
Exactly,
because you never know.
I know you hate not seeing Bryce Harper getting a chance to go to another World Series.
I personally don't have a problem with Bryce Harper.
Why do people have a problem with him? I think he's just
they don't like the way that if you're a Braves fan, I get it because he plays for the Phillies, but I mean, he just I guess it's like if you're a Baker Mayfield fan, it's like a similar thing. I mean, I think Bryce Harper is a better baseball player than Baker Mayfield is a football player, but I think it's the same kind of, You don't like the attitude.
Understandable.
That's fine.
Understandable. Well, you ain't got to worry about him anymore because he's gonna be sitting at the crib. Cancun on 3. 1, 2, 3. Cancun. He's gone. But yeah, baseball action continues today. The Guardians and the Tigers. Tigers have a 2-1 series lead. That game. First pitch is at 5:08, And then, of course, the Royals and Yankees. Yankees look to close it out later on today. And also the Padres and Dodgers set for game 5 tomorrow, with that series tied 2-2. So that's your baseball update there. Continue the conversation about some teams that should be on upset alert this weekend. Eric, he texted in, Eric from Sneed. He says Iowa State, Kansas State, and Kentucky could all be on upset alert this weekend. I think when you look at what the especially that Big 12, like we talk about the SEC and how kind of wide open that it is, it does feel like Utah kind of has I guess they're kind of like the pace car. They're leading the Big 12 right now. But a lot of these teams in the Big 12, they're middle of the pack, I guess you would say. It's pretty strong. It's pretty thick. Like now you're looking at Colorado and seriously looking at them as a team that could really be in play in the Big 12. You look at Kansas State and what they were able to do to Oklahoma State a couple weeks ago. So it kind of shapes out that the Big 12, whoever does end up taking that conference, I think is going to be pretty battle tested once the college football playoff rolls around. And also you might see 2 teams from the Big 12 end up being there depending on, how many more losses that second team has just within the conference. And I think that when you look at what Kansas State has been able to do, and it to me, this is kind of the telltale sign of Colorado. It's all right. Have y'all made the necessary moves? Because if you go back and watch that UCF game a couple weeks ago, that was by far the best game Colorado has put together for 4 quarters. Where you hit the road. You're not in the comforts of Boulder, Colorado, but you take it to UCF at levels like you were able to run the ball against them. You were able to make plays defensively to slow down the UCF offense. And I mean, KJ Jefferson, I thought it was going to be a plug in for Gus Malzahn's system. It was going to be smooth sailing. And we start to see some things that kind of were starting to show its face when he was at Arkansas. It's all right, well, we're dependent on you to make the decisions that we need you to. Then, of course, you had red zone interceptions, you see turnovers and things like that. So it's interesting to see where they are. And Eric says Iowa State. Iowa State comes in at number 11th ranked team in the nation, taking a trip to Morgantown, West Virginia to take on the Mountaineers. And Iowa State, to me, I don't know. Like when I look at them in the Big 12, just pecking order, it's almost very similar to Missouri. Like I don't look at them as the 11th best team in the nation right now. I don't feel confident saying like, yeah, they're going to be able to figure this thing on out the rest of the way, because I do think that when you have the Kansas States, when you have the Utahs and things like that, like they're so different from the rest of them. Like I don't think they're just naturally as physical as what the Kansas State is going to present or what the Utah Utes present as well offensively, as far as just their identity as a whole. But I do think that they're a talented team, and also that this trip to West Virginia could be interesting because we've seen what West Virginia has been able to do when they're clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the toughest game that they play. I mean, I know they beat Iowa earlier in the year, but it's Iowa, right? I mean, certainly from an offensive standpoint, I think this is probably going to be their toughest challenge and the best quarterback that they've faced, and Garrett Green with West Virginia. And, I've been a little disappointed with West Virginia so far. I just thought that this year, because last year, I mean, we thought Neil Brown was going to get fired in the middle of the season because they were going to be so bad. Then he ends up putting together a pretty good season. Then you bring back your quarterback, you bring back a couple of pieces on offense, and you think, okay, like they had something rolling last year and they figured it out. Well, let's see them take the next step, and they just haven't been able to do that. But this would go a long way in, kind of getting your season back on track if you're West Virginia. And I mean, it's a tough place to play. I mean, we know the fans are going to be crazy. We know it's going to be rowdy. It's going to be loud. And I'm with you with Iowa State. I'm still just kind of in wait and see mode. Like I know they're undefeated, and I know teams like a Utah, for example, already has a loss. But with those, you feel like you kind of know what you're getting, right? Because we've seen those teams, and we've seen them be able to compete at a high level regardless of what conference they were in. And you just have a little more confidence in them. And then even at Kansas State, like, they had that ugly loss to BYU, but I think Kansas State maybe has the highest ceiling of these teams in the Big 12. But, we saw them, again, you lost by 29 points to BYU. And BYU, again, has been really, really impressive. It's just, I feel like BYU always kind of flies under the radar just for whatever reason. But the win they had over Kansas State was super, super impressive. And so I feel like, I mean, this is kind of what we expected, right? That the Big 12 was kind of going to eat itself alive. And I mean, somebody's going to come out of it and be the conference champion and get presumably a bye in the first round of the playoffs. But, you know, it just feels like on any given, I mean, kind of like the SEC right now, but to an even greater degree, I feel like in the Big 12, it really feels like, anybody can beat anybody on any given weekend, and even teams like, Arizona, for example.
Yep.
We've seen what they're capable of doing when they're clicking on all cylinders and how they can go out there and put up. But then you also see the ugly side of that too, right? And so it's just been kind of up and down for a lot of these teams there in the Big 12 this year. But no, you got a good slate there with a lot of really, really interesting matchups. And hey, if you're, like you said, you want to make that statement if you're Dion and you want to let people know, like, all right, we kind of got some stuff figured out here in Colorado. This is again, I don't think that, we're talking about a team that's going to go on a surge and,
Right.
win 10 or 11 games this year. But I mean, heck, if you're in a spot to go win 7-8 games this year at Colorado, that would be remarkable. And I would genuinely be very impressed with what Dion had been able to do. So
Yeah.
some good ones this weekend, man.
It is, man. Joseph takes in. He says other upsets to look at. Arizona, you spoke about that BYU team. They take the trip up to Utah, take on BYU, USC, and Penn State in the great Big Ten matchup that we were so anxious to see.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be like the Rose Bowl game you had in, what was that, 2015 with Sam Darnold in there. I mean, that's one of the best bowl games I've ever seen, and just in terms of how entertaining it was. But this one's interesting for Penn State because, again, this is a good opportunity for them to, it's a quality win. It's not Ohio State, but it's a quality win in the Big Ten. And if you're, USC, it's a good chance for, I mean, that loss to Minnesota, man. Like, I just don't.
I didn't see it coming, man. Not a good look.
No, this is no. You need to get back on track, and beating Penn State would certainly do that. But I mean, Penn State's looked good, man. I'm not gonna lie, they've looked better offensively. I'll give them credit. I'm still not.
It's still James Franklin over there.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it.
Again, I just need to see. I need to see it happen once, and then I can believe you. But until I can see you actually knock off one of the big dogs, it's, we'll see. It's like, and I know they're completely different styles. They just I kind of look at Penn State similarly to how I look at Ole Miss right now, in the sense of I can believe that you're good, and I certainly think you're worthy of being in the playoff. But until I see you actually take down a Georgia, an Ohio State, a Texas, a Bama, whatever, I'm going to have some reservations.
I agree. And I get it. And I kind of feel the same way too, because Penn State will always have just that one questionable of like, what's going on? Like, you're better than this. And you just leave
every time they have a chance to not be the little brother for a week, they end up being the little brother again.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Ziggy takes in. He says, put Ohio State on upset alert. I say Oregon gets Autzen rocking, and my Ducks get the dub. Go Ducks. Also, we have a text message from Mason from Gaston. He says, Alabama should be on upset alert. Dylan Stewart and that South Carolina defensive line are going to eat Alabama's offensive line alive. Whew. That'd be a tough 2-week stretch for Alabama if that does happen. But listen, I just read the text messages. I don't ask any questions. It's just, hey, yes, Dylan Stewart is a game changer. He is a game changer. And if Alabama does not find a way to stop 6 there on the edge, it could be a long day. We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Continue to take a look at this weekend slate of games. You can text in. You can call in. 205-834-9450. Keep it locked on the other side for Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 6:38 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell, Conrad Van Order, and of course you, our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Your text, your calls. We got some text messages. Kirby texted in. Not Kirby. I'm assuming this isn't Kirby Smart.
But you also don't know if it's not Kirby Smart.
That is true. He says Auburn goes 8-4 the rest of the season. They played me pretty good.
Wait, read that again?
Listen, he says Auburn goes 8-4 the rest of the season, period. They played me pretty good.
I mean, I'm
So you think they've gotten their losses all out the way? They got to go to Missouri, got to go to Kentucky. They welcome Vanderbilt at home. They welcome Louisiana Monroe at home. They welcome Texas A&M to the Plains, and then the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa.
I'm just saying the end of that text makes it definitely seem like that is Kirby Smart, the text.
It's got to be.
Said they played me pretty good. I mean, okay, I'm sold. It's Kirby Smart. Appreciate you listening this morning, Coach.
I appreciate it, man. I think you got some other issues you need to worry about on the front there in Athens, but we do appreciate you listening. You could text in anytime, Coach. Anytime. Somebody else texts in and says, if Bama can't get off the field on third downs, I don't think it matters what SEC team we play. Definitely have a good chance to getting beat.
Yeah. That is a very good point. Again, it is certainly a concern. It is something that needs to be fixed. I will also say that coming into the game against Vanderbilt, Alabama had the number one defense in the country on third down.
Yep.
Granted, that makes what happened against Vanderbilt even worse when you think about it. But, we'll see if that's more of it was just Vanderbilt just had a better game plan and they were able to take advantage and you weren't able to make the plays, or if this is a legitimate concern moving forward. But to be fair, you did allow Georgia to go 5 for 5 on fourth down 2 weeks ago as well. So, there are some concerns, but we have also seen, granted, it was against lesser competition, that be able to shore that problem up.
Yeah, and then as we look at this Alabama South Carolina matchup, and listen, I think Shane Beamer's a good coach. I think he's definitely gonna have his team motivated, ready to go mentally. But if you've really watched Lenore Sellers, do you think in your heart of hearts he could beat you? Especially if you get him in third and long situations. Now his legs, they are a true weapon, but
he can't throw the football like Pavia does.
Exactly. Like he reminds me, he's more Byron Brown than he is Diego Pavia, especially with his arm.
Which, to be fair, he caused you a number of problems when you played USF.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's a legitimate concern. And, Alabama's run defense hasn't been what you would want it to be up to this point. And so if you're able to find a game plan with Sellers and using his legs and using Rocket Sanders and finding a way to attack, you can make some things happen. For me, and this, I could come back to regret saying this, but I don't know if you agree with this or not, Damien. It almost feels like South Carolina already peaked. And I could be completely wrong about that, but it just feels like they came out of the gate pretty strong and, going back to that LSU game and then putting up a good fight there and what they were able to do to Kentucky. And I just, I could be wrong. It just felt like they really had something rolling there. And then Lenore Sellers got hurt, and that kind of derailed it for a little bit. Now he's, hasn't gone particularly well when Robbie Ashford's had to be in there. And it's just, and I could be wrong. Maybe they just need to get healthy and, they're going to look like the team we saw, earlier in the season this week in Bryant-Denny Stadium. I don't know. It just kind of has that feel of they had a lot of momentum, and now I feel like it's all gone away.
Yeah, if they would have played Ole Miss a little bit better,
yes.
That would give me a little bit more confidence in them. But right now, I agree with you 100% that Kentucky game is probably going to be the one of, all right, this is what they can play like at 100%. Like this is just what their ceiling is. But also, I don't think that's enough for what you have across the field against Alabama. And I do think Alabama has some question marks, and a lot of it is defense. I don't think offensively that Alabama has as many issues. I think people want to see them run the ball more, but I do think Jalen Milroe and what his development has been at the quarterback position is exactly what you've wanted to see so far. So it's why take the ball out of his hands and let him make the decisions that he needs to. And I think from every single level, as far as a passer, he's improved. We know what he can do with his legs. And also, I just think the receiving core that they have, they're your strongest suit. So why not continue to give them the ball? But I
Mhm.
do understand that there's some times where you just want to be able to enforce your will and just have Justice and Jam run the ball 100 times if they need to. But I don't think that they have to. I think it's more of an add-on because of what you're able to do with the guys out wide and what Jalen Milroe has been able to do at the quarterback position. And I do think the third down is a concern. You don't want to have South Carolina having these third and shorts, third to mediums. You would much rather them have medium to long ranges, and then see if they could truly just line up and get a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8 consistently. Make it difficult because the percentages are lower as you get further away from the first down marker on
Yeah.
3rd down anyway. So I do think that South Carolina could make this game interesting early on, but I do think Alabama, they definitely want to get that bad taste out of their mouth from what happened against Vanderbilt. And I just don't, I would find it difficult that happens back-to-back weeks where they look that bad defensively.
And that's my thing is, again, whatever. You can call me a homer if you want, but we have seen, and I understand it's Vanderbilt, so it's different, but I just feel like we've seen this so many times before, and I understand that Nick Saban's not there anymore, but I mean, let's go back to, okay, Alabama beats Georgia. I don't know if many people caught this, but I don't know if it was on game day or maybe when he was on the McAfee show, but somebody asked Nick Saban if he had reached out to Kirby Smart after Alabama beat Georgia. And he said, yeah, I reached out to Kirby Smart. And he told him, or he said that his message to Kirby Smart was pretty much all of the best teams that I ever had. You lost a game early in the season. You learned a lot about yourself and you were able to go from there and you responded the right way. And if your team responds the right way, you're probably going to be fine. And again, it's just we've seen this happen with Alabama a number of times, and maybe it'll be different this year. But until I see that, I just find it hard to believe with the players that the way that they took that loss, and especially a guy like Kane Womack. I mean, that dude's probably worked not, and I don't mean this as like he's never worked hard before, but I'm willing to bet he's probably worked harder this week than maybe any week in his coaching life previous to this because of what happened against Vanderbilt and the understanding that that absolutely cannot happen. And if that's how the defense is going to look moving forward, he's going to have to find himself another job next year probably. And so I think he gets it. I think the players get it. That doesn't mean that the execution is going to be fixed. It doesn't. There can still be issues out there. I just, like you, I find it hard to believe that you are not going to see a different Alabama team this Saturday. Now, does that mean you're going to see an improved Alabama team every week for the rest of the year? No. But I think at least just taking it 1 week at a time, I will be very shocked if you do not see an Alabama team that looks hungry and motivated and a little bit pissed off on the field on Saturday. And if that's not the team that we see,
then some issues.
There's some problems.
Yeah. And also I'm interested to see what Malachi Moore does too. Imagine this. Say that Malachi gets like a scoop and score or a forced fumble or interception. How quickly do you think people forget about what happened at the end of Vanderbilt?
Pretty quickly. I think a lot of people have already kind of gotten over it.
Yeah, kind of get that Men in Black just, all right, let's go ahead and erase that. Boom, it never happened. So we shall see how that game goes. Continue the conversation on the other side. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 6:50 here on Morning JOX. JOX 94.5, Damian Mitchell. Conrad Van Order here with you for a few more moments as we get you set for McElroy and Kublik in the morning coming up at the top of the hour. Jordan from Warrior text in as anybody can, 205-834-9450. Jordan says, 100% guarantee Bama covers, put any amount of money you want on it. Rolleth Tide. I ain't mad at you, dog. If I had a couple coins in my pocket, I'd probably say Alabama covers. It's only 21.
They better.
What would be a at this point, is just a win is a win. You'll take it however you'll get it. Or do you think that Alabama needs to they need to go ahead and lay the belt down to South Carolina this weekend to cool all comfort?
I mean, a win is a win, but this might be unreasonable of me, but personally, not me as I'm talking to you right now, but me as the fan sitting on my couch at 11 a.m. on Saturday.
You want to see a beatdown.
I mean, I'm probably not going to be happy. I mean, unless they win by 30, I'm not going to be happy because I want to see, and I know that sounds so spoiled and ridiculous, and it is, but in the sense of I need to see them dominate somebody to have that confidence that, okay, they still got that dog in them. Like, they're going to be all right because, look, I mean, a win is a win, and South Carolina, I mean, they're not a bad team, but, if you tell me the score's like 28-17 or 28-20, like, I'm still probably going to have some concerns about Alabama coming out of that game going into Tennessee. And still, I mean, that's going to be a difficult matchup regardless of what happens this Saturday. But yeah, I mean, let me see something.
I got you. Hey, listen, I understand. I'm kind of right there with you too. As an Alabama fan myself, it's I need to see a beatdown.
Mm-hmm.
I need to see a beatdown.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the phone lines before we wrap up here. Let's go to our buddy Wardam Don wants to talk some ball with us this morning. What's going on, Don?
Good morning, fellas. First, before I talk a little football, my prayers are with everybody in Florida, and I just saw the roof of Tropicana Field get ripped off. Holy cow!
Yeah, man, it's
oh my goodness,
it's tough down there, man.
Prayers to my buddies, PG. He still has family down there and everything. PG, we're thinking about you again today, buddy. But I mean, it was terrible and everything. But the way they projected it, I thought it was going to be a lot worse than this, but it's still bad. But hey, Conrad, buddy, I got a feeling y'all going to come out and just guns a-blazing and win by 30 points. You just said, I do. I mean, this is a statement game for y'all, in my opinion.
I agree. I agree, Don. It's the players and the coaches, they have 2 ways to respond to last week, and we'll learn a lot about this team up against South Carolina just by how they come out and how they respond.
Well, who's playing quarterback for South Carolina is the
Sellers.
Okay, and is the other guy that was hurt back too, one of the receivers, running back?
Yeah, Rocket Sanders. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? Your defense will get tested because they can move the ball. So,
yes. Yeah.
But if I had to say a score right now, Conrad, I'd say 42-10.
I would take that.
It'll change tomorrow.
Would you take that? And hey, by the way, do you like those 11 o'clock games where you go ahead and get your game over and you can relax for the rest of the day?
I mean, I don't mind it. I'm not as vehemently opposed to them as some people are. Granted, I will say this: when I was a student, hated those games. No, didn't want any part of them. But now, I don't mind.
Yeah, that's right. You're hungover from the fraternity parties from the night before.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get up and go tailgate at 7 a.m., but, that's what we did.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot, fellas. You guys go have a good day now.
You as well, brother. Always good to hear from you, man. Dave texted in. He says 70 points won't take the sting of a Vandy loss away. I didn't know it was that depleting, man. Just got to give a lot of credit to Vandy, man. We're almost a week away from it. Well, off of it, and Vanderbilt was just they were the better team that day. Simple as that.
It's Diego Pavia's world, man. We're just living in it.
Exactly. He's going to be running for governor here in Alabama before too long because he's beaten both Alabama and Auburn. Not too many people can say that, but yeah, we shall see. Wesley, he says this week is more of a reset for the Alabama program than the first week Saban left. We shall see, man. It's all about how you respond. McElroy and Kublik in the morning. Those guys are next.